Hey everyone watching this, Jacob here. 18 years old, officially an adult, and apparently the moment I blew out my candles, the universe decided to hand me a test I did not sign up for. I thought adulthood would start with maybe a little freedom, maybe a celebration, maybe even a gift card. Instead, my dad's new wife Shelby decided my birthday was the perfect moment to assign me a job. Not a gift, a duty. And yes, she used that exact word with her chest like she was the commander of a small, chaotic army. For context, I am Mason, 18 years old, recently surviving high school and trying to figure out my life. My dad, Mark, is 46 and got remarried 2 years ago after my parents split. My mom now lives 3 states away and honestly seems happier than ever. Shelby, my dad's wife, is 39, a former wellness influencer whose hobbies include aggressively drinking kombucha, posting emotional quotes written in flowy fonts, and acting like she invented parenthood. Her kids, Carter, who is 6, and Lila, who is 4, are exactly the kind of kids that happen when a parent decides that boundaries are too negative for their chakras. My dad is in a phase where he worships Shelby like she has magic powers, and Shelby is in a phase where she pretends I am either invisible or an unpaid intern. Emotionally, I fall somewhere between houseplant and decorative lamp in this household. For the last year, Shelby has acted like me turning 18 meant I was now legally her personal assistant. She loves to say the sentence, young men should learn to serve the household, and every time she says it, my soul steps out of my body. Dad thinks it is adorable. I think it is a red flag that could be seen from space. So on my birthday, we were sitting at the table with a store-brand cake because Shelby said, and I quote, "It is just sugar and chemicals anyway." My dad handed me a handshake instead of a hug because he has decided he is now a traditional father. And then Shelby cleared her throat and proudly announced that she had come up with a responsibility-building duty for me. She slid a color-coded schedule across the table like she was promoting me to assistant manager at the world's worst daycare. The paper said I would be babysitting her kids every Saturday and Sunday from 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. For free. Because according to her, it would help me develop discipline. I laughed so hard I accidentally snorted soda through my nose. I told her no, just no, not happening. She looked like someone had unplugged her Wi-Fi. Dad gave one of those exhausted sighs that he thinks makes him sound wise and said, I should contribute somehow. Shelby said I was being ungrateful and that this was an opportunity. I told her that if she wanted a babysitter, she could hire one or she could pay me. She yelled that they had no budget for that, even though she had bought a $1,200 air purifier because her favorite influencer said dust has emotions. I was done. I refused again, and she looked like she wanted to douse me in essential oils to exorcise the negativity. I thought that would be the end of it. Spoiler, it was not. All week she was dropping hints like a passive-aggressive Easter bunny. I found kids' movies on my bed, a stack of parenting philosophy books on my desk. She texted me reminders about my duty, even though I had never agreed to anything. She even put a sticky note on my door that said, "Start Saturday, be ready," with a smiley face that felt like a threat. By Friday night, I decided that if she wanted to play lessons, then I would give her a lesson back, a real one. Saturday morning at 7:45, she knocked on my door like she was a hotel concierge. She chirped that it was time for my shift. I said through the blankets, "No thanks," rolled over, and turned on heavy metal loud enough to rattle her crystal collection. She stomped away muttering about my negative vibrations. Dad tried to threaten to take away my car privileges, except that I do not have a car. He has forgotten that multiple times. On Sunday, she escalated. She marched into my room with her kids trailing behind her and announced in a loud whisper that Mason would take care of them while she worked. I sat up, stared her dead in the face, and said, "Nope." Carter immediately burst into tears. Lila joined in. Shelby glared at me like I had just kicked a puppy and yelled that I was causing emotional distress. I told her she was the one lying to them, so if anyone was causing distress, it was the woman who thought manipulation was a parenting strategy. For the next 2 hours, the kids clung to her legs screaming because she had promised they would have fun with me. She tried guilt. She tried emotional speeches about family unity. She even tried the line, "Real men help their family." I told her real adults did not try to pressure teenagers into unpaid labor just because they wanted a yoga break. By Wednesday, she exploded. She yelled at me that if I would not help, then I could deal with the consequences when the household fell apart. I told her that would be unfortunate and maybe then Dad would wake up. Dad said I was disrespectful. Shelby said I was sabotaging her well-being. Even the dog looked tired of all of us. That morning, before school, I had printed something, a fully calculated sheet showing the local babysitter rates. $17 an hour for 2 kids. I multiplied it by 8 hours a day and by every weekend of the month. I taped it neatly to the fridge. When she found it, she screamed so loudly the dog hid under the table. She accused me of attacking her motherhood and ripped it into confetti. But here is the thing. Every tantrum, every guilt trip, every attempt to shove responsibility onto me only strengthened my resolve. I was not going to be their free labor. I was not going to be a replacement parent just because Shelby wanted to film yoga videos without background noise. And so the final moment came, the exact moment when she finally understood that pushing a teenager into a role they never agreed to does not create discipline. It just creates consequences. The lesson part came when she learned what happens when she tries to outsource labor to an unwilling teenager. Shelby stopped leaving accidental reminders about babysitting on my door and instead switched to acting like I had personally launched a smear campaign against her. She hovered around Dad, whispering dramatic sigh-filled sentences about sons who do not respect the sacred labor of motherhood. Dad kept patting her shoulder like she had survived a natural disaster instead of a teenager telling her no. But Shelby was not done. She was plotting. She decided that the world needed to hear about her suffering, her burden, her tragic story of being married to a man with a son who refused to dedicate his life to her content calendar. So she scheduled a live stream, a big one. She promoted it for days, posting vague, inspirational graphics about setting boundaries with negative energies and teaching young men responsibility. She even lit sage before hitting the go live button, as if it would protect her from reality. I watched from my room, headphones on, but with one ear listening, because I had a feeling the universe was about to hand me something entertaining. Her live stream was her usual routine at first, with her sitting in perfect lighting, talking about how mothers carry an unfair burden and how society fails them, and how young men these days refuse to step up. She leaned hard into the phrase lazy Generation Z boys like she had just invented it. People started commenting things like, "Tell your stepson to help more," and "He's 18, make him do it." She looked proud of herself, but the universe has a sense of humor that even I could not have written better. While she was mid-rant about how I refused to do simple tasks, Carter burst into the room like a chaotic, glitter-covered meteor. He was absolutely drenched in glitter sunscreen, not just on his arms, everywhere. Hair, face, pajamas, even his tiny socks. He looked like a disco ball that had come to life. Lila followed behind him, crying hysterically that she wanted the sparkly lotion too and that Carter had used all of it and that it was not fair. Shelby's face froze. She tried to smile for the camera while waving them behind the desk with the energy of someone trying to shoo away a raccoon. Then she tried to mute the stream, except she did not mute anything. The internet got the full audio package, her whisper yelling that she told them to stay with Mason, followed by a frantic screech that they were ruining her brand. People in the comments lost their minds. They were typing things like, "Did she just blame her? Kids for being kids?" And "Why are they with a teenager instead of their mother?" Someone clipped the moment instantly and posted it with the caption, "Influencer Karma Speedrun." Brands she had partnered with before started dropping comments asking if she needed assistance, not in a supportive way, in the "are you okay" way. One of her bigger sponsors emailed her midstream, and she panicked so hard she almost knocked over her ring light. She ended the live stream abruptly after babbling something about her home being full of unexpected energies. It was the influencer version of a plane crash landing. 5 minutes later, she cornered me in the hallway with the fakest calm smile I had ever seen on a human being. She said we should find a way to compromise, which in Shelby vocabulary meant that I babysit for free, but she rebrands it as paid experience. She said something about exposure being valuable. Exposure is good for musicians, artists, and small businesses, not teenagers being used as free childcare. I told her no again, a full, unshakable no. Dad tried to intervene by launching into a speech about family unity and the importance of helping each other, but when I asked him how exactly I was helping by raising 2 small children while Shelby filmed skincare rants, he had no answer. He opened his mouth, closed it, then looked like he wished he could walk into another room and pretend he had not heard any of this. Shelby went into her full meltdown phase. She started crying in a dramatic slow-motion way like she was auditioning for a soap opera. She said her career was at risk, her reputation was under attack, her viewers were turning on her, and that all of this stress was caused because I refused to evolve into a responsible young man. Then she slumped against the kitchen island and cried even harder. Dad tried to hug her while she wailed that the algorithm would punish her for this. She cried for 20 minutes and said her career was in jeopardy. Not my problem. After Shelby's meltdown about her career collapsing like a poorly built sandcastle, the house simmered in awkward silence. She stopped live streaming for a few days, claiming she needed to regain her spiritual alignment, which was code for hiding in the bedroom with a phone glued to her face, obsessively checking comments and analytics like the numbers personally insulted her. Dad walked around with his usual expression of exhausted confusion, as if he was trying to remember how his life ended up starring a woman who cried over algorithms. I, on the other hand, was enjoying the quiet. No chores mysteriously assigned to me. No crystals left in my room for energy cleansing. No budget breakdowns torn off the fridge. For a moment, it felt almost normal. Then Shelby decided her reputation needed a comeback arc. She scheduled a collaboration video with another influencer. A big one. She announced it at breakfast with the pride of someone being knighted. Dad congratulated her. I kept eating cereal because I had learned that any conversation that started with Shelby's career would end in me being blamed for something. The day of the collab, she transformed the living room into a makeshift studio. Ring lights, tripods, stacks of skincare jars arranged like tiny altars. The kids were supposed to be with her, but Shelby had a talent for thinking supervision was optional when views were on the line. I found that out when I went to the kitchen to grab a drink and heard a small, shrill cry from the backyard. It was Lila, sitting in the dirt with her knees scraped and her hands covered in mud. Carter stood beside her, poking a stick into the ground like he was reenacting a wilderness survival show. They were both alone. No Shelby in sight. I had not agreed to babysit. I still did not. But I was not about to ignore a 4-year-old crying in the yard. I walked outside, helped Lila up, dusted her off, and checked her knees. Nothing serious, just dirt and a mild scrape, but she was upset enough to scream like she had been attacked by a bear. I brought them inside. What I did not know was that the neighbor across the street had seen all of this. And she was not the type to let things slide. She was a nurse, tough-looking, always direct, the kind of woman who could silence a grown man with a single eyebrow raise. As I was helping the kids wash their hands, there was a loud knock on the door. Not a polite knock. And I know something is wrong, knock. I froze. Dad was at work. Shelby was in the living room mid-collab, smiling at the camera with her influencer voice turned on and her false lashes fluttering dramatically. The knock came again. Shelby muted nothing and answered the door while still wearing her bright ring light makeup. The neighbor asked if the parents were home. Shelby snapped that yes, they were fine and slammed the door so fast the decorations rattled, but the neighbor was not convinced. I could tell by the way she stood on the sidewalk afterward, staring at the house like she was taking mental notes. 2 days later, Shelby got the call. I was in the kitchen when it happened. I heard the ring, then her voice going from normal to terrified in seconds. She came storming into the room looking like she had seen a ghost, yelling that Child Protective Services wanted a home visit. Then she turned on me and accused me of sabotaging her on purpose, insisting I must have reported her because I wanted revenge. Dad came in asking what was going on, looking like someone had unplugged his brain. Shelby pointed at me saying, "Mason is sabotaging me. He wants to ruin me." Dad stared at me like he was waiting for an explanation. I told him I did not report anything, but someone did. Shelby's face went pale, and for the first time since she entered our lives, she looked genuinely afraid. She rushed to the living room and started cleaning like her life depended on it. She organized toys, scrubbed surfaces, arranged books by height, and lectured the children about indoor voices. Then she started cooking an organic dinner she had never made before, acting like she was auditioning for Parent of the Year. She even approached me with a soft, rehearsed voice, saying that I deserved space to focus on my own future. Translation: she was terrified CPS would ask me questions and find out she treated me like free labor. The day of the home visit, she dressed the kids like catalog models, braided Lila's hair so tight her eyebrows lifted, and forced Carter into an outfit he clearly hated. She hovered over them like a mother hen that had suddenly discovered parental instincts. The CPS worker arrived, calm and professional. She walked through the house, asked standard questions, looked around for safety hazards, checked the condition of the kids, and conducted a general assessment. Shelby stood behind her nodding like a bobblehead, smiling so widely her face twitched. CPS was satisfied. They noted that while the yard incident was concerning, nothing suggested long-term danger. They gave reminders about supervision, had a polite conversation with Shelby about responsibilities, and left. Shelby nearly collapsed afterward, dramatically clutching her heart like she had survived a life-threatening event. The CPS visit went fine because the kids weren't actually in danger long-term, but it scared her straight. Shelby spent the week after the CPS visit acting like a reformed saint. She vacuumed daily, wiped down counters that were already clean, and hovered over the kids like she had just discovered supervision was a real concept. For the first time since she married my dad, she was parenting. It was strange. Not unwelcome, just strange. But of course, the peace did not last. Once her nerves settled, once she convinced herself the universe was no longer conspiring against her brand, she redirected her anxiety toward her favorite topic: me. Apparently, everything wrong in the home pointed in the same direction. In her mind, I was not a teenager trying to graduate and figure out my future. I was a dark cloud hovering over her essential oils, ruining the energy of her carefully curated influencer lifestyle. She cornered my dad during one of her nightly monologues and said that I was a stressor in the home environment and that it would be best if I spent more time with my mom. She said it like she was offering a wellness tip instead of trying to eject me from the house. Dad repeated her words later as if he had come up with the idea on his own. He gave me this serious fatherly expression he saves for moments when he pretends he is a wise patriarch and told me that it might be good for me to move out earlier than planned. I looked at him and said that was fine because I already did. While they had been busy accusing me of sabotaging Shelby's career and threatening the integrity of the household, I had been doing something productive. I applied for dorm housing at the local community college. They had an early move-in option. I got approved faster than I expected. So while Shelby was worrying about her follower count and Dad was wringing his hands over household harmony, I was packing boxes in my room quietly, stacking them by the door. 2 weeks later, I left. No dramatic showdown, no yelling, no guilt trip farewell speeches. I simply zipped up my last bag, carried everything to my car, and told them both goodbye. Shelby acted surprised, like she had not spent the previous month acting as though I were some uninvited boarder, diminishing her creative aura. Dad looked conflicted, but not conflicted enough to tell me to stay. The silence in my new dorm room felt like freedom. No children screaming because they could not find the tablet that Shelby hid to make them play authentically. No essential oil diffusers pumping lavender fog into my lungs. No lectures about masculine household duty. Just my space, my bed, my schedule. That should have been the end of my involvement with that circus. But then last week my phone buzzed. The sender? Shelby. She sent a long, overly polite message that read like she was trying to swallow her pride and pretend it tasted like kombucha. She said she needed help watching the kids just this once. The collab partner she relied on had canceled. She had an important live stream. She needed quiet in the house. Could I help? It would mean a lot to the family. I stared at the message for a minute, then typed exactly what she needed to hear. I told her my rate was $20 an hour, minimum 4 hours, paid up front through Venmo. She read it. She did not respond. The 3 dots never appeared. A few hours later, Dad called, trying to play the disappointed parent card. He told me I was being cold. I told him I was not being cold, I was being professional. I said that if someone wants labor, they pay for labor. If they want free service, they can train the crystals to babysit. He sighed the long, dramatic sigh of a man who knows an argument cannot be won and hung up. I went back to my homework. My room stayed peaceful. Shelby never texted again. Dad stopped hinting that I should help the family. They both learned very quickly that once I left, I was not coming back to play the role they wrote for me. And the funny thing is, without me there to blame, they had to deal with the consequences of their own choices for the first time in years. Shelby's real lesson was simple. If you treat someone like free labor, eventually you will have to pay for the help you need. And mine? Leaving solved more problems than babysitting ever would. And that might be the proudest achievement of my 18th year.